Alright guys, I've had this question quite a lot, and I'm going to take my glasses off because they're reflecting in the screen. I've had this question quite a lot, and a lot of people have asked, hey, all very well making a tier list, but like, who do I want to focus on to get Mythic Plus first? Because obviously Mythic Plus makes a big difference for a lot of heroes in the game. And so I thought I'd make a handy little tier list where we could talk a little bit about who to focus on for Mythic Plus and kind of what you need to be doing. It's kind of like get your collection ready, I guess, for the later stages of the game. So that is what this is going to be about. It's about Mythic Plus, who it becomes like a totally different unit at Mythic Plus, and who it doesn't matter that much. And what I'm going to say is that each one I will talk about individually, and just because I put something in like insane at Mythic Plus, it doesn't mean that you should go for it. It's just that unit becomes so much better at Mythic Plus, and you know there are comps that can work for them. And I'll talk about all the units individually as we go across, so don't worry too much about that. And then we will kind of discuss each unit as it goes. Some of them are just like, yeah, like okay at Mythic Plus. Some of them are just like, yeah, this is absolutely unbelievable at Mythic Plus. Okay, so let's first off start with Antandra. She's part of a meta double tank composition at the moment, and is very strong in that regard. Great for pushing content progression. But is it super worth it to Mythic Plus her? Because it's quite difficult to fit Antandra on your wish list. You've only got 4 slots, and there are plenty of good A-tier heroes for maulers, like Coco and Odie, for instance. So it's difficult to kind of say, is it worth the investment? Really, what Antandra does at Mythic Plus is she will jump to an ally and reduce their damage taken by quite a good chunk as well when they reach 50% HP. Frankly, that's pretty good. Doesn't make her a completely new hero, though, but it is nice to have. And I'll just say that it's nice to have her at Mythic Plus. It is, and I will say, though, it is not necessary for progression. It makes progression a lot easier because it will reduce the damage to like a Cessia if you're using Cessia for progression, for instance, but it's not absolutely the most important thing ever. We'll go on to Eironn. Eironn, insane at Mythic Plus. He is part of the late game Eironn team composition, and essentially his Mythic Plus weapon just allows him to deal more damage of with what he already does. So it basically allows him to kind of double up on his own ult and deal damage to people that he gets that he uses his ultimate on. He's just a great unit at Mythic Plus. It's hard, he's one of the few, I'll say, there aren't that many wilders at A tier that you'd want to put on your wish list, so Eironn you can naturally level him up over the course of your playtime, and that will be fine. Really, really good to have him at Mythic Plus, though, and it definitely makes the team composition with Eironn work really well. Right, Atlanta. To be honest with you, don't bother. I don't think she deserves a space on the wish list for Lightbearer. And she isn't particularly good in the late game. There are better single target DPS units, and she doesn't really have anything special going for her. So there's not much more to say than not really worth it. I'm going to put Burial on Don't Bother, just simply because it's so hard to get copies of these types of heroes that it really just isn't worth the resources invested. And that's basically all I can say for someone like him. It's very difficult to justify the cost, and whilst the Mythic Plus is nice, kind of really helps him do what he does best. It increases the isolation time on a unit that he's focusing on. It's just it takes so long to get these types of heroes to Mythic Plus that it's just not worth it. Okay, Brutus. With Brutus, it's sort of like it's not the Mythic Plus that really makes Brutus what he is. Getting him to Mythic Plus will just increase his stats overall, and a Mythic Plus essentially allows him to get a cleave attack that heals him, which increases his survivability. But Brutus is there for one reason and one reason only. It's his invulnerability shield. It buys you enough time to get your other ultimates off, and the Mythic Plus only makes a small difference, in my opinion, to kind of Brutus as a character. It's a nice to have, but it's not going to change what Brutus does realistically. Okay, next is Brian. What do I say about Brian? His Mythic Plus is pretty good, right? He unlocks the ability to stun opponents when he gets stunned, and then also negates like quite a lot of burst damage. And if you upgrade it enough, you can basically get a self-revive out of it, which, if you're going to run Brian, it's fantastic. That actually, as a character, makes a really big difference. But frankly, like, there aren't many teams that really fit him in. There are just people that do his job better, and I personally would say don't bother, because I think there are things that I'd rather have on my wilder wish list than Brian. So I wouldn't bother at the moment, at least for the moment, for the time being, having Brian on there, because it just doesn't really feel absolutely worth it. These were in alphabetical order, and now they've completely gone away from alphabetical order. But we're going to continue in alphabetical order, because I think it's the best thing to do. And the next one is Carolina. So Carolina forms part of the late game Eironn composition. She's very, very good in the late game. And it's sort of hard for me. I wouldn't say that her Mythic Plus is like mega game changing. It essentially reduces magic defense and increases her damage the more times she casts a certain spell. But it's not like it completely warps how she plays. She's always going to be good, and I think you can place her in the Eironn composition even if she isn't Mythic Plus, and she'll still do a really good job. She's not the sort of the primary damage source. She's just there to apply more forms of crowd control to kind of get Arden going. So yeah, Mythic Plus is super nice on her, but it's not absolutely necessary. But I would definitely have her on your Graveborn wish list once you're done with things like Thorin and Cessia, for instance. I'm nearly done with Cessia, and my first replacement is going to be Carolina, just so I can sort of start getting her, because I don't even have one copy of Carolina yet. The next is Cassidy. Cassidy is really nice to have at Mythic Plus. She has, essentially, when she gets her Mythic Plus item, she can reduce magical defense, which is great if you're running sort of magic teams in Dream Realm. But it's not like she becomes insane at Mythic Plus. It's just nice to have. It's not a small difference, because reducing magic defense is a really nice thing. It's a great debuff. But it's also not like she doesn't become like an absolutely insane unit once you get her to Mythic Plus. Definitely worth having her on your wish list, though, for the Light Bearers, because there actually aren't many good Light Bearer S tier heroes, and I think Cassidy definitely is worth it. Okay, Cessia. Mythic Plus is nice. Mythic Plus with Cessia is nice. It does not make her a game changer. It does increase her damage, and it gives you sort of an ability to CC someone, but it's not the most game-changing thing in the world. The reason I'm putting Mythic Plus is nice is because Cessia is kind of one of the primary forms of progression right now. If Cessia wasn't so meta, I'd probably put it in Mythic Plus makes a small difference, because ultimately her Mythic Plus ability does not make a massive difference. But the more you upgrade Cessia, the more likely you are to progress in the current sort of state of the game. So that's why I'm keeping Cessia where she is at the time being. All right, Damien. Honestly, Damien becomes insane at Mythic Plus. And because essentially he can apply haste to the whole team. And that makes him super strong in late game PvP and even late game PvE scenarios. You wouldn't think this little annoying character would be that good if you get him to Mythic Plus, but he genuinely is. Genuinely is very, very strong if you get him to Mythic Plus. So that's why I keep him on my wish list, because I think getting copies for Damien is super nice for late game PvP. Okay, so the next one is Dionel. Now, Dionel is an interesting one because his Mythic Plus is actually very good. Essentially, when he maxes out Nectar Feast, he can deal true damage to the entire board. The problem is there's not many comps that can really make him work. And if I'm going to be completely honest with you, it's the same category that I'm putting Burial in, although I will say he's probably better than Burial. If you want to, picking him up is good, but it just takes so many resources, it's just not worth it. Like, if you're a Mega Whale, for sure, try and get this guy to Mythic Plus, because, you'll find that it becomes an absolute beast in later game stages. Like, he really is a late game beast for a reason. But frankly, I don't think it's worth it. If I was choosing a Hypergean or a, one of those types of characters, I can never remember the other one, to sort of focus on, it wouldn't be Dionel right now, especially because we don't have as many characters that can kind of support his Nectar Feast. So yeah, quite honestly, definitely is really good at Mythic Plus, but I'm only putting him in the don't bother category because the resources required versus what you can get from others is, Eironn. Absolutely insane at Mythic Plus. You can probably tell that there's a bit of a comp going on here with these guys over at the top end of the screen. Eironn is Yeah, basically gets the ability to cast instantaneously when you get his X weapon, which is just insanely cool and really good, and it basically means you can burst someone straight away. He becomes a completely different character at Mythic Plus, and so definitely worth it in every way, shape, and form to get him there. And he is on my wish list, primarily just stuck on my wish list for Wilders. Okay, Faye, yes, Faye, really don't bother. She's not very good. Not on my wish list. I wouldn't put her on my wish list either. Not much more I can say about that. Okay, next is Granny Dani. Mythic Plus, I would almost put her in the don't bother category, just simply because she just gets outshone by pretty much every other tank at the moment, even though she's actually quite a good character individually. Thorin is better than her, so people always run Thorin as a main tank. And if you're going to run a 2-tank composition, you're generally running Brutus and Antandra. And so she just doesn't get a look in from a tank perspective. So there's not really much point trying to farm copies of her, even though, you know, at Mythic Plus, she's pretty decent. The thing about her Mythic Plus ability, though, is it's very much focused on just herself. Like her Glimmerboom shield is obviously the shield that she uses, and it grows bigger and increases her physical defense and increases her magic defense and recovers loads of HP, and that can basically last for ages. So she really can become a mega single tank at Mythic Plus, but it only affects her, and then she can still be burst through. Difficult to do so, but she can still be burst through, and then realistically Thorin does something similar. So you know, I think it's okay, you know, like I wouldn't spend too much time. In fact, you know what? No, Mythic Plus makes a small difference. It's kind of in the Brutus category. You'd be happy to get her to Mythic Plus, but you're not really going to be aiming for it. Okay, let's jump on to the next one, which is Hewin. So Hewin actually having Mythic Plus is really nice, because when she gets her exclusive weapon, she can also reduce the damage that allies are taking, which means, you know, she's already the best healer in the game, and reducing damage that allies take is even better. The thing is that she's quite energy hungry, and it's quite difficult to get her to cast her ultimate, so you always have to pair her with Rowan. And there's just not that many meta comps that you can fit a Wilder support into. Maybe down the line, definitely, but it's one of those like nice to have things rather than like something that you need to aim for with this character. Hewin can actually function before Mythic Plus really nicely as just a dedicated healer. So you don't have to worry too much about that. I wouldn't say you have to focus on getting her to Mythic Plus, you know. So with Igor, who's next on the list, he kind of falls into that category of it's a nice thing to have. So Igor, when he gets his Mythic Plus, essentially what he does is he increases the range of his Ghostly Explosion, and then also reduces healing from certain targets, and basically allows him to be a bit better in that sort of long fight, which is Igor. Igor is supposed to be, as you've probably seen, very good in these long fights, but you know, it doesn't really suddenly change the game. It helps him achieve his battle plan better, but it doesn't sort of change him as a character. It's nice to have, though, and Igor is one of those characters that all the Graveborn S tiers are really good, by the way. Like the lot of Graveborn S tiers are pretty good. But yeah, he's just one of those sort of situations where he's like, it's nice to have it, but I wouldn't spend too much time trying to focus on it. Okay, where are we up to next? We're up to Khafra. Yes, Khafra. Where is he on my list? Because he's going straight in the bin. Not worth it. It's just, I wouldn't have him on my wish list. There's just not much point. Not much more to say. Coco! Here we go. So interestingly, despite Coco being really meta, it's not really that important to have her at Mythic Plus. I will rank her above these two, though. Mythic Plus essentially just means that once her ultimate has concluded, full energy, she grants a shield to everyone based on sort of the damage that's negated and stuff like that. But it's so slow. It's such a slow Mythic Plus ability that it most of the time it's not even going to have an impact in a fight. So it makes a small difference. The reason we obviously we want copies of Coco because she's just good. But it's not like someone that you have to rush to Mythic Plus to make a difference. Coco can be used at Epic and still be really good in the team. So, you know, you don't have to worry too much about Coco getting up the ascension ladder, because it doesn't make that much of a difference to her as a character. Right, who are we on to next, guys? Let's have a look. Corrin. Yes, here we go. Corrin is very, very good at Mythic Plus. It actually something that's really important to him as a DPS tool. So what Corin does, I've just put him in the insane at Mythic Plus category, by the way. What Corin does is that once allies cast, like collectively cast 3 times, Corin starts dealing true damage based on max HP of a target. Now, the only reason we use Corin in almost any scenario is the Dream Realm, and this massively, massively boosts his Dream Realm DPS. So he becomes really strong at Mythic Plus. If you don't have Corin and Miralee on your wish list, put them on your wish list, because it's very important that you start to move their ascensions up, because that's what they're used for, is the Dream Realm, and you just want to make sure that you're giving them all the tools they need to succeed in the Dream Realm, you know. All right, our next unit is Kruger. Kruger gets a nice... his Mythic Plus actually isn't that big of a deal. I don't personally think it's a big deal anyway. Essentially, he gains a shield. He just gains some tankiness. And if you don't start him around other allies, he sort of, gains a bit more stickiness. It's not really what Kruger's used for. Kruger's used for his ultimate to reduce physical defense on bosses. It's, to be honest, not a big deal to have a Mythic Plus or not. You can really make use of 1 or 2 copies of Kruger in the early game, and you never really have to worry about him much again. I wouldn't ever get him to Supreme Plus, because you'll never see that get used. But, the Mythic Plus can help him survive in Dream Realm bosses a bit more, which allows him to apply more debuffs. It makes a small difference, but it's not the end of the world, essentially, is how you'd look at it. Okay, next is Lucius. Honestly, that's not Lucius, that's Temezia. Where's Lucius? Yeah, honestly, don't bother. Lucius's Mythic Plus is really crap. Like, I think it's maybe I honestly think it's maybe one of the worst Mythic Pluses in the game for what he's supposed to do. Like, if they gave him some tanky stuff, if they gave him like a damage reduction to self, or he casts half of his ultimate healing on his allies when they drop below 50% HP or something, right? That would be kind of cool. At the moment, he's got a beam that deals damage and also reduces enemy attack, and it's not even reduces their attack by a huge amount. The first level is 8%. So it's just not a big deal. And so I just don't think it's like massively worth it. I don't really rate Mythic Plus Lucius at all, if I'm honest with you. All right, next in the game is our boy Lumont. Yeah, no, just joking. Really don't bother. Again, not worth it. There's too many good Mauler heroes. There's no way you'd put Lumont on your wish list. Don't bother with it. I don't know what else to say. I would just, if you're putting Lamont on your wish list for Mauler, you're kind of trolling. Okay, now we're going to be talking about Leica, one of my favorite heroes, just from I'm actually going to stop. I'm going to stop that sentence. It makes a small difference. Leica is, again, she doesn't fit into many comps right now. She gains, essentially her Mythic Plus allows her to sort of cool down meteorites as she's attacking, but the problem is she's not really a dedicated marksman. She's much more of like a buffing marksman. So I just don't rate it. I just don't think it's that good. And it's not really worth it. I mean, I have loads of copies of Leica. I've almost got her at Mythic, but it's just because I somehow pulled about 1 billion Leicas when I started. I think I didn't have my wish list set up properly. She's okay. But I wouldn't, spend your time worrying about investing copies into her to get to Mythic Plus, because it's not a deal breaker for Leica. Now on to Miralee. Same reason as above. Miralee is absolutely excellent, and when she gets her X weapon, her normal attacks deal true damage, which basically makes her even stronger. So she's absolutely brilliant, and just definitely becomes an insane Mythic Plus, and becomes an even better in the Dream Realm, because essentially when her normal damage attacks deal true damage, you don't even have to worry about having a Kruger on your team, and you can play Miralee alongside Rainier and Odie, and they can do magic defense reduction, and you can kind of just have a true damage Miralee going for it. So yeah, she's just fantastic at Mythic Plus, and I've got her on my wish list because you need to have her for Dream Realm. So actually, interestingly enough, number tier 1 waifu, Mirael, actually has a pretty decent Mythic Plus upgrade. She essentially casts one of her fireball spells as a basic attack after casting her ultimate for the first time. And that makes her, she has like her hero focus increases her attack speed, which is great. This is really nice. But the only problem is, and I will say Mythic Plus is nice to have on her, the only problem is that you don't want her on your wish list because you want Miralee and Corin. But I can't, say that it's not worth it, because she can become really strong in the later stages of the game. So if you pull a load of copies of her, that's fine. And Mythic Plus is genuinely all right. I can hear my son crying. Give me a second. Okay, so next on the list is Neru. So, yeah, Neru is an interesting one. So, Neru is a very interesting character that he's not bad at all. And actually having him at Mythic Plus is quite nice because essentially he instant casts his ultimate on the enemy behind him, and if you get his exclusive weapon up to +5, spirit allies don't lose HP until all allies are in spirit form. So essentially, you basically get at least a whole set of double lives for your entire composition, which is very annoying when you've got Thorin who self-revives and you've got Igor who just can't die. So you can kind of run this really annoying comp with him as sort of a support. So I have him on my Graveborn tier, my Graveborn wishlist, because he actually can be pretty useful. And there aren't actually that many great Graveborn A-tier heroes to look at. So Nero is pretty solid, actually, and definitely don't overlook him. He's definitely got a place in the meta somewhere. All right, my boy Odie. He is a monster at Mythic Plus. He really is. He's already very good in terms of not being at Mythic Plus, but his exclusive weapon is called Heart Crusher. And once unlocked, when an enemy falls below a certain HP, he just executes the target. So essentially, he just keeps executing targets over and over again. So getting one kill basically snowballs him, because then he gets his energy back and he just keeps casting his ultimate, and he can essentially just take out entire teams. So Odie at Mythic Plus is a big deal, and he needs to be on your tier list. He's your wish list. He's one of the best Mythic Plus characters in the game. All right, let's take a look at Parisa. Another one of these wilder heroes that isn't particularly fantastic. Her exclusive weapon unlocks the Falling Blossom skill, which immediately targets an enemy that's occupying this Parisa's tile on the same enemy side, and casts Floral Splendor on them, which I've never used Parisa, so I'm just going to quickly double check what the hell. I don't even think I own Parisa. 1 second. Oh, basically, it's her ultimate. So she immediately casts Floral Splendor on enemy, and obviously, if she recasts it on the same target, it boosts the effects. But again, like, you can't really make space for her on your wilder list. It's just not. She's decent. She's not as bad as some of the other heroes in the game, but you can't really make space for her on your list. She's consistently meh throughout the whole game. All right, now the big boy, Rainier. Yeah, Rainier becomes an absolute beast at Mythic Plus. He becomes like one of the ultimate debuffers. I'm gonna have to extend my tier list, I realized. He becomes one of the best debuffers in the game, especially in the Dream Realm, and pairing him with Odie just becomes fantastic in Mythic Plus. The only thing I will say, like any of the Hypergean etc. characters, getting them to Mythic Plus is the problem. They require so many pulls, and you have to get so lucky. Stargazing is a complete pain in the ass. So, yes, he's insane at Mythic Plus, but getting him there is the problem, as with all of the characters that come from Stargazing. Next is Reese. Reese is an interesting one, because, again, he's one of those situations where it's like he's competing for slots on the wilder wish list, which is very difficult to do so. His Mythic Plus is okay. I wouldn't say it's crazy. Essentially just gives him like a movement speed boost, and he like loads blast ammo automatically. It's he's okay. I don't really know what else to say. Like, it's just one of those like okay upgrades. He's not particularly meta, so it is what it is. Let's move on to Rowan now. So Rowan actually essentially gets his healing upgraded at Mythic Plus, which in my opinion fixes one of Rowan's major issues. Is Rowan even on this? I don't even think Rowan's on this list. I can't see him. How have they not got Rowan? They've not included Rowan. Right, well, we're going to just have to pretend Rowan is... I don't know. I'm not going to rate... we're going to pretend that this... Oh, God. I don't want to, like, someone to screenshot this. 1 second. I'm going to add an additional image. We need to get Rowan. We need to get our boy Rowan in here. All right, he doesn't look like anything like the rest of them. Rowan... Getting him to Mythic Plus is super nice. He doesn't become insane, but it fixes a lot of his problems, which is that he's not a very good dedicated healer, right? So that's one of the problems with Rowan, is he's not a particularly strong dedicated healer. And by getting into Mythic Plus, that really does solve some of those issues of having Rowan as a singular dedicated healing support. So Not insane. Like, Rowan is a bit of a one-copy wonder. You don't run Rowan for the healing for the most part. But when you get him to Mythic Plus, he does have an extra element of healing in his kit, which is super nice. He's going to naturally be on your Lightbearer wishlist anyway, because there aren't many good Lightbearer heroes. So you can probably naturally get him to Mythic Plus as time goes on. Now we're going to talk about Salazar. And we're going to talk about him very shortly, because it's really don't bother. Salazar's kind of crap. And actually, we're going to continue that theme with Citrana with really don't bother, because she's also kind of crap. We're now going to go on to Scarlita, however. And yeah, so Scarlita is just another one of these situations where, you know, she becomes absolutely nutty when she gets her X weapon. It's again another situation with these types of heroes from Stargazing where you probably won't get them to exclusive weapon very quickly, so you won't get to Mythic Plus pretty quickly. But essentially, she can deal true damage. If the entire team is alive by the time that she descends, she deals true damage. When you upgrade it to exclusive weapon plus 10, her attacks start executing enemies below a certain HP. So she's a bit like Odie, where she can just start absolutely wreaking havoc on the map. And that just makes her very, very strong. But you need to get her to Mythic Plus. A lot of that power is locked behind the Mythic Plus. Okay, so let's have a look at Seth. Seth is an interesting one because you don't see him used that often. But essentially, Seth can automatically reset the Call of Beatdown and recover energy whenever an enemy is defeated. So essentially, he can snowball pretty quickly. And if you get it to +5, he increases the damage every time he casts it. So it's like it is really nice, and it can definitely make him feel more powerful. But again, you're running into one of those issues with Seth where, how do you fit him on your wish list when there are just so many other good Wilder heroes to have there? And that's one of the problems with a lot of these Wilder heroes. And speaking of a Wilder hero, again, we've got Shakir, and we'll talk about his Mythic Plus now. So Shakir is, I don't know, it's one of those things that is like, he basically doubles the energy that it takes to get to his ultimate, but you increase the uptime on his ultimate. So it has like pros and cons, basically, and the problem with the Shakir is he's just not played very much. He is pretty good all round, and I think most people would say that he's a good hero. It's just that he hasn't really played that much in the meta, to be honest with you. But, you know, it's one of those Mythic Pluses. It's one of the few Mythic Pluses in the game that actually has a downside to it, in terms that he actually needs more energy to get to his ultimate. But once he casts it, you know, it's, important. Now we've got Sylvina, who is one of those assassins that kind of needs her exclusive weapon to be really good. It's very similar to Vala, to be honest with you. But essentially, she gets a massive shield upon casting First Strike, and also at +10, it frightens all nearby enemies. So it just makes her really strong in PvP, and that's why I think she becomes quite insane at Mythic Plus, because it just makes her much more viable as a... Yeah, no, I'm not going to put her in insane. I'm gonna extend the tier list because it's suddenly still going off the screen. It becomes good. Insane is doing our girl Vala an injustice, because Vala fulfills the same role that Sylvina does, but Vala is actually insane at Mythic Plus. Smokey and Miralee. Let's have a look at these guys. They are one of the most popular healers in the game. And their exclusive weapon is kind of odd. It unlocks Withering Potion, and this basically grants a third upgrade to Special Aroma that's only active for a very short period of time. And it increases the Aroma Rage by another tile and deals percentage HP damage to all enemies within its effect. I don't know, like, this Smokey and I don't really think Smokey and Mythic Plus is that big of a deal. Smokey and Mickey is great. The Mythic Plus is just, like, why would you want the damage and the stun on it? It doesn't really make sense to me. I just don't rate the Mythic Plus upgrade for Smokey and Mickey. I don't think it's fantastic. Definitely don't need to focus in on it. All right, Temezia. Temezia is an interesting character. It basically unlocks Invincible Fury, which basically causes Temezia to be permanently unaffected after 2 casts of Knight's Heart. It also makes her charge deal true damage. We love true damage, and this is great. And crowd control is obviously one of those things that really shuts Temezia down. So it's like, it is really nice to have. I don't think it makes her insane, but it is really nice to have Temezia with Mythic Plus. You know, but the only problem with Temezia is that there's not many situations where you'd play her. You know. Now we have Thorin. So yeah, Thorin's Mythic Plus, he basically signs a pact with an ally, and Thorin takes half the damage that his pact-bound ally would receive. So it's quite good if you've got if you want to protect a particular carry, particular carry from something like a Valar or something like a Sylvina. But if Thorin takes lethal damage, he steals a lot of that ally's HP to resurrect himself. So he basically gets quite a lot of extra sustain. I don't think that suddenly makes Thorin insane at Mythic Plus. I think Thorin's kit is good before Mythic Plus anyway, but it's nice to have. You won't find much use for it in PvE because if Thorin is stood directly in front of someone, it's very rare that the person behind him is going to take any damage. But it just gives him an extra revive, and he's already got about 1 billion revives. So, you know, that's that for Thorin. Valar. Yeah. I actually want to move Arden down here. I don't think he's as good as all of these ones. Valar. Valar at Mythic Plus is absolutely insane. So basically, when you kill the marked target with Valar at Mythic Plus, she becomes invisible and untargetable, and gains an attack speed and attack speed steroid and an attack steroid, and essentially can clean up loads of stuff. I love Valar at Mythic Plus, and actually you'll find that people who play PvP relatively competitively have Valar at Mythic Plus because she is so insane in PvP when you get her to that stage. So yes, Valar, absolutely worth getting to Mythic Plus. I've done an entire video on it, to be honest with you. Valen, don't bother. Walker, don't bother. And we have Viperion. So Viperion is an interesting one. He's actually pretty solid, but isn't absolutely insane. His exclusive weapon causes him to nuke all of the enemies at the start of the fight. And it actually adds a lot of damage to the fight. So it's actually quite a nice to have, and Mythic Plus is definitely nice. It wouldn't make him a new insanely good new character, but it is quite nice to have him at Mythic Plus if you can get it. But the thing about Viperion is that he's only I only run him in very specific Graveborn comps, and he's decent. He's good at all stages of the campaign, but it's hard to fit him into really meta comps. And this is my Mythic Plus guideline. And if you want a bit of kind of ending advice, it all just comes down to what you're putting on your wish lists. As long as you've got everything of all of the ones in Insane at Mythic Plus on your wish list in some way, shape, or form, you can be a bit more flexible with the others. But I hope this helps you make a decision about who you want to upgrade, and especially when you're aiming for late game as well. So hopefully that helps you guys. And yeah, thank you very much. I'll see you soon.